I've downloaded the Excel spreadsheet called Education Financial Plan Template, and I want to show you how to use it. You'll use this to create your own education financial plan. So on this sheet you have 2 pages. The first page shows year 1 and year 2, and the second page shows year 3 and year 4. There are already expenses loaded into the spreadsheet that are typical expenses. In this case, expenses to go to college here for 3 semesters per year. And then over here, the funding sources are amounts of money that you'll get from yourself, from your family, from sponsors, from other sources. And so what we'll do is we'll change these numbers as appropriate to match your individual needs, and then fill in the funding sources, and you'll do that for each year. So, for example, if you're only going to 2 semesters and not a 3rd semester, you'd want to come in here and delete tuition. And now watch when I delete this, how the totals will change. As I delete that, the totals here, here, and here all changed automatically. That's the nice thing about using the Excel spreadsheet, is that as you put numbers in here and as you take them away, it will automatically calculate the totals for you. So that's nice. So let's say that you are staying in Rexburg, but you're not going to the spring semester, so you'll want to delete the books. And you'll still have to pay for housing and food and personal expenses and health insurance, most likely. So that would be that, and there's your total. But let's say instead, during the spring semester and summer session, you decide to go home. So in that case, you would be able to maybe delete some of these things if you're able to live at home and reduce your expenses. But your traveling would go up because of the travel involved, so let's change that as well. So you can see how you can modify this to adapt to your individual needs. And then over in the funding sources, this is where you put amount of money that you have, that you're providing for your education. I'm using easy numbers that are quick to type in. Let's say your family is going to contribute. And let's say you have a sponsor. And you can spread these numbers out over the 3 semesters, or you can just have one number, one lump sum if you'd prefer. You can put in multiple sponsors if you have them. You can put in other sources. For example, if you had a grant from your government, you could put that in here. And let's just say another $3,000. So in this case, your funding sources equal more than your expenses. That's a good thing. That's what we want to see. So, and you would go ahead and do this for every year. Go ahead and fill out the 2nd and the 3rd and the 4th years and the funding sources as well. And when you're all finished, you'll have a grand total expenses and grand total funding, and this funding needs to be at least as much as your expenses. So that's the idea behind this budgeting, this financial plan. So I just want to go over some of the notes at the bottom of the page to make sure we've covered them. We did cover that one. I did not cover this about the SEVIS fee, and that is that I'm showing the SEVIS fee every year, but you'll only have to pay that once as long as you continue your education. If you take a 5-month or more break from your education, you'll have to pay that again the next time you come back to school. So for example, if you go on a mission for 1.5 years or 2 years, the next time you come back to school, you will have to pay the SEVIS fee again. So I did briefly cover this, but I'll just reiterate. The 3rd note is to just mention that whether you're going to school in spring, in your off semester or the summer session, whether or not you're going to school or not, you still have to account for the expenses that you'll incur during those times. Whether you go home, which might increase travel, or whether you stay, which will increase, your housing and food. You'll need to account for that because you will have to be paying expenses during that time. And then if you have a dependent, for example, a spouse or children, you need to increase the expenses by $2,500 per year for each dependent. And you can distribute those expenses out over several categories. But for every spouse or dependent, you need to add $2,500 per year per dependent. And then on the second page, there's a few notes. And I already covered note 5. And the last one is just simply that tuition is more for non-members of the church. So you'd want to adjust that if you're not a member of the church. So, once you've completed this plan, of course you're going to submit it for the international services here at BYU Idaho to review and to make sure they don't see any major problems. But you'll also want to sit down with your sponsor. If you have sponsors, you'll want to sit down with them and make sure they understand all of the expenses that you're facing and how critical they are to you maintaining this balance and being able to go to school. Because if you can't maintain that balance, you may have to postpone your education. So sit down with your sponsor and cover this plan with them so that they understand their commitment and they understand your needs and the timing as well. We really believe that if you will give serious thought to this plan and do a good job with it, that it will save you a lot of trouble down the road and it will help make you much more successful. I hope that helped you understand how to use this, and I hope you'll have great success with your education.